some people call it professional storytellers, which means sometimes I get paid. And the story that I'm going to tell tonight is one that I've been telling for quite a while. Some of you may have heard of Bluebeard.
Oh, yeah.
It's a rather scary story, cautionary tale. This is the British version of Bluebeard. And in my own experience, I could tell Mr. Fox, the one I'm going to tell tonight, and I think the reason was because I heard it when I was in a big audience like this. It was fake. But I couldn't even read Bluebeard because I was in an abusive situation. The first time I tried to read Bluebeard, I heard this whimpering sound. And I looked around to see what was going on. I was by myself. It was me. That's how bad it was. But I read Bluebeard a few years ago, and I'm fine now. And so here is Mr. Fox. Now the way I heard it from Connie was this. Way out north in the moors of England, there was a little village. And just north of that village, there was a wood. A wood that very few people went into. They said it was enchanted, haunted. Something wasn't quite right. And in the village, there lived a young woman named Mary. Now, Mary was at the age where men would come to court. And back in those days, if you were being courted, you had to have a chaperone. Usually, it was your mother or your father. But Mary was an orphan child. And so it was one of her older brothers. She had 4 of them, who was her chaperone. Now, Mary had many suitors. The boys from the village came to see her often. And while that was okay, none of them were really all that interested. But then, one day, a new man moved into town. Oh, he was a fine dresser. He was so handsome with his bushy red hair and his bushy red mustache. His name was Mr. Fox. Now, Mr. Fox had seen Mary in the shops in town, and he thought she was fine looking too. And he came round to see if he could get permission to court. He was given permission. And at first, he started coming once a month or so. And they got to know each other a little better. And then, because Mary liked him and she let him know that she liked him, he started coming every other week. And finally, every week he was there. Usually on a Tuesday. And they talked of many, many things. Mr. Fox told her stories about where he had been and all the wonderful things he had seen and the people he had met. And he just had this wealth of knowledge, so much more so than any of the boys in the village. He was so interesting. And Mary just sat there and soaked it all up like a sponge. And one day, Mr. Fox said, "You know, Mary, I've been coming to visit you for many weeks now, months in fact, and you've never been to my house." "Oh, well, Mr. Fox, I don't think I even know where you live." "Well, it's true that I do keep to myself, but it's no secret. I live in a house in the wood north of town." "Oh, that's why, Mr. Fox. Nobody goes into that wood. It's enchanted or haunted or something. Something's just not quite right." "Why, I find it a perfectly safe place to live. One of these days I'll come round and take you out and show you." But he never got around to coming and taking Mary to his house. Now it came to be May. And Mary decided she needed some wildflowers to decorate her house so that when Mr. Fox came the next time, it would be beautiful. So on Sunday afternoon after church, Mary took her basket, put on her hat, and set off gathering wildflowers. She picked a few here and she picked a few there, and her basket was filling up, but by the time she got to the edge of the wood, she didn't have quite enough flowers. And she could see right there, right inside the wood, there was a clump of bluebells. Oh, they were beautiful. She just had to have some of those. And so she walked just a little way into the woods, and she picked a few, put them in her basket. And then over there was a clump of yellow flowers. They were beautiful too, and she needed some of those, so she walked over there, and she picked a few more, and she walked, there were some more, and then there were some more, and some more. And before Mary realized it, she had walked further into the wood than she had expected to. And when she looked around, she knew she had gone too far. But she wasn't really afraid, for she knew if she just turned around and walked south, she could walk out of the wood. And as she straightened up from picking those flowers, she noticed right over there, there was a clearing. And she thought, oh, well, I'll just walk over there and I'll know for sure which way to go. I'll get my bearing by the sun. And so that's what she did. She walked over to the clearing and she started to look around the clearing. And on the far side of the clearing, she saw a house, a grand Tudor-style house. And she thought, oh, that must be Mr. Fox's house. Why, he knows the way back to town. I'll just walk over there and knock on the door and have him take me back into town. So that's what she did. She walked across the clearing to the house. She walked up the steps. And as she walked towards the door, she noticed that carved in the lintel above the door were some words. They said, "Be bold, be bold." Oh, thought Mary, I wonder what that means. But she went up to the door and she used that brass knocker and she knocked really loud. And then she waited. And she waited. And she waited. But nobody came. And Mary thought, well, I'll just go peep in the windows. And so she got up and she walked around to the side there and she looked in the window and, oh, what a grand entrance hall she saw. Mighty fine. And she went inside. She opened, excuse me. She opened that door. Anybody got any water?
Right here.
Thanks, Tina.
Sure. You got it.
She just opened that door and walked right in. And there in that entrance hall, there was a grand table with a huge bouquet of flowers sitting on it. And across the entrance hall, she saw a grand staircase. You know, one of those that goes up like this and has that hand-carved banister. Mary thought, I've always wanted to go up one of those staircases. And so she walked across the hall and she started up the staircase, pretending that she was a grand lady. And when she got to the top, she was still in kind of a daydreamy mood, and she noticed there was a long hallway with windows all along one side that overlooked the clearing. And she looked down at the end of the hallway, and there was another door. Why, that must be Mr. Fox's bedroom. Oh, I just love to see his bedroom. And so she walked down the hall, and she noticed that there were more words carved in the lintel above the door. It said, be bold, but not too bold. Oh, I wonder what that means. opened the door and she went inside. And oh, it was a grand bedroom. Why, the bed itself was a masterpiece. She walked all around the room with her hands behind her back so she wouldn't disturb anything at all. And when she got to the far side of the room, there was another door. Must be Mr. Fox's closet. Oh, he's such a fine dresser. I would love to see all his clothes. She looked up, and in the lintel above the door it said, be bold, but not too bold, lest your heart's blood should run cold. And a little tingle went down Mary's spine, but being a curious sort of young woman, she opened the door and looked inside. Now, on the far side of the closet, there was a little window that let some light in so she could see. There were no clothes at all. None. Instead, in that closet, there were 3 huge vats. And Mary thought, that's strange. But being that curious sort of a girl, why, she went in and she looked in the first vat and she saw hair, long, human hair. But being curious, she had to go see what was in the second. And she saw bones, human bones, with some skin still attached. But she just had to see what was in that third bag. And she went over and it was filled with a dark liquid. That tasted like blood, human blood. And that tingle went down her spine again. And she turned around and she left the closet. She shut the door and she looked around the room to make sure that nothing had been disturbed. And she ran out of the bedroom and shut that door. She ran down the hall. And as she was running down the hall, she happened to glance out the window. And she saw Mr. Fox striding across the clearing, dragging a young woman by the hair. And Mary thought, oh no, I'll be caught. What do I do? And she ran down the stairs and she looked around, and there below the stairs was a little alcove. And Mary thought, maybe I can hide there. And so she crouched down and pulled herself way back into that alcove just in time. For the door flew open and Mr. Fox strode into the house, still pulling that young woman by the hair. And he strode over to the staircase and started up the staircase. And that young woman was yelling and screaming and thrashing about, but she couldn't get away because he had twisted his hand into her hair. She reached over and grabbed a hold of the banister. And Mr. Fox, without missing a step, pulled his sword and hacked off her hand at the wrist. And went on up the stairs. And that hand fell down, 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 right into Mary's lap. Well, as soon as Mary was able, she gathered up all her things. And she ran out the door, shut it behind her, and ran through the clearing, ran through the woods as fast as she could go, all the way home. Now that was Sunday. And on Tuesday, Mr. Fox came to court. Mary made sure that all 4 of her brothers were home that day. And when Mr. Fox came in, she said, Mr. Fox, I've been having this bad dream. It comes every night, and I don't know what to make of it. Oh, well, said Mr. Fox, you know I've traveled the world and I've told many dreams. Perhaps if you tell it to me, I can figure it out for you. Very well, Mr. Fox. And so Mary began to recount her dream. I dreamed, Mr. Fox, that I went into that wood north of town. I was gathering wildflowers, like the ones that you see here. And I got so far into the wood that I wasn't really sure where I was, and I looked up and I saw a clearing, Mr. Fox. And I walked over to that clearing so I could get my bearings, and when I got to the clearing, I looked across it, and there on the other side of the clearing, I saw a house, a Tudor-style house. And I thought, well, surely someone there will be able to tell me how to get back to town. And so I walked across the clearing, and I went to the house, and I walked up to the door, and I noticed that above the door there were some words, and they said, "Be bold, be bold." Well, I knocked on that door, Mr. Fox, and I waited, and no one came. And then I tried the door, and it opened. So I went in, and I was in this grand entrance hall with a table and beautiful flowers. And there across the hall was a beautiful staircase. And I thought, oh, I would love to walk up that staircase. And so I did. And I saw a room down at the end of the hallway. And I went down the hallway and went to that room, and I looked up above, and it said, be bold, but not too bold. So I opened that door, and I went inside, and it was a bedroom. It was a bedroom, Mr. Fox. And it had the most beautiful furniture in it, and all these things sitting around. I looked at all of them. And then I got to the closet. And above the closet it said, be bold, but not too bold, lest your heart's blood should run cold. And Mr. Fox said, oh, 'twas not so. And Mary said, oh, but that's just the way it was in my dream, Mr. Fox. And I opened the door to that closet, and I looked inside, and there were no clothes in that closet, Mr. Fox. There were 3 vats. And I looked in those vats. The first one had hair, long human hair. And the second had bones, human bones with skin attached to them. And the third one was a vat full of blood, human blood. And Mr. Fox said, oh, surely it was not so. And Mary said, oh, but that's just the way it was in my dream, Mr. Fox. And I was a little scared, so I ran out of the closet, and I shut the door, and I ran out of the bedroom and shut that door, and I ran down the hall, and as I was running down the hall, I glanced out the window, and Mr. Fox, I saw you. You come striding across the clearing, dragging a young woman by the hair. And so I ran down the stairs, and I hid. Just in time, because then the door flew open, and you came in, Mr. Fox, still pulling that young woman by the hair. You came to the stairs, and you started up the stairs, and she was yelling and screaming and flailing about, and she grabbed a hold of the banister, and you, Mr. Fox, you pulled out your sword, and you hacked off her hand at the wrist, and went out of the stairs. And Mr. Fox jumped to his feet, and he said, it is not so, and it was not so, and God forbid it should ever be so. And Mary also stood up. And she looked Mr. Fox right in the eye. And she said, it is so, and it was so. And from under her apron she pulled that hand and laid it on her plate. And here's the very hand to show. And then Mary's 4 brothers took Mr. Fox out back, and they killed him. But I shan't tell you how, lest your blood should run cold.